The deep space monitoring station Epsilon Drift hung like a forgotten ornament at the edge of the Viridian sector, its dull metallic hull collecting cosmic dust and memories in equal measure. Inside, bathed in the soft glow of holographic displays, Nyx adjusted her headset and leaned back in her chair. Her purple skin shimmered under the artificial light, the bioluminescent patterns along her cheekbones pulsing gently with her heartbeat, a telltale trait of Australian physiology that she could never quite suppress, no matter how many cycles she'd spent away from the astral confederacy. "Station log, cycle 3077, she murmured into the recorder. Deep space channels remain clear. Anomaly in Sector 9 was identified as standard meteorite debris. Nothing worth reporting. Nothing was ever worth reporting. That was the entire point of her exile here, monitoring the endless void at the galaxy's periphery, listening for signals that never came, serving her rehabilitation sentence for daring to question the Confederacy's militaristic expansion policies. Far from the crystal spires of her homeworld, far from everything she'd ever known. Recommended action. Continue observation, she concluded mechanically, before switching off the recorder and reaching for her mug of synth tea, now cold after hours of neglect. The monitoring station could run itself, did run itself mostly. Her presence was merely a formality, a breathing component in a system designed to function without her. 6 more cycles and her sentence would be complete. 6 more cycles of this crushing solitude before she could return to a home that would no longer feel like home. Her thoughts scattered as a sharp tone pierced through her headset, an unscheduled transmission cutting through the background static. Nyx jolted upright, fingers dancing across the console to isolate and amplify the signal. "This is TSV Horizon Wing. Emergency. Systems failing. Oxygen at 30%. The voice was strained, fatting in and out through waves of interference, but unmistakably urgent. Nyx's training kicked in as she tracked the signal's origin, coordinates that made her violet eyes widen in disbelief. The restricted zone. The dead planet Xylos, forbidden to all vessels under the Interstellar Accord of 2789. "Horizon Wing, this is Epsilon Drift receiving your distress call," she transmitted back, professionalism masking her surprise. "Please identify yourself and the nature of your emergency." Static crackled before the response came through. "This is Talon Vex of the Meridian Fleet. Crash-landed on Xylos after navigation system failure. Ship damaged. Life support failing." Nyx's bioluminescent markings flashed rapid blue, a physiological response to shock she couldn't control. A Meridian. The green-skinned inhabitants of the Meridian Collective were infamous for their technological prowess and their centuries-long conflict with the Astral Confederacy. Her people. Ancient enemies whose war had only officially ended 3 decades ago, though tensions remained knife-edge sharp. Protocol was clear. Report the violation to Confederate command and await instructions. Under no circumstances engage directly with potential hostiles, especially Meridians. But something in the pilot's voice, a vulnerability, a resignation, made her hesitate. "Understood, Horizon Wing. I'm scanning your vessel now." Her fingers moved swiftly over the controls as she conducted a remote analysis. The results confirmed his dire situation. Critical system failures, depleting oxygen reserves, structural damage consistent with a crash landing rather than an attack. "Your power core is destabilizing. You need to." "I know," Talon interrupted, his voice steadier now. "I've tried rerouting emergency power, but the core containment is failing. I have maybe 6 hours before total system collapse." 6 hours. Not enough time for an official rescue team to reach him, even if command would authorize one for a Meridian in restricted space, which they wouldn't. They'd consider it a security breach, possibly a trap. "Hold position," Nyx said, already knowing what she was about to do was grounds for extending her exile indefinitely. "Continue conservation protocols. I'm sending help." She cut the transmission before he could respond and locked her station into autonomous mode. The maintenance shuttle wasn't designed for rescue operations, but it could reach Xylos in under 4 hours. Just enough time if everything went perfectly. As she packed emergency supplies, her mind raced through justifications. It was her duty as a monitor station operator to preserve life, regardless of origin. The Meridian-Australian Peace Treaty technically obligated mutual aid in emergencies. She was exercising independent judgment in a time-critical situation. But the truth was simpler and more dangerous. She couldn't listen to someone die, not when she had the power to help, not even a Meridian. The shuttle bay doors slid open with a reluctant groan. Nix's private vessel, the Star Whisper, was small but well-maintained, one of the few possessions she'd been allowed to keep after her trial. As she initiated the launch sequence, doubt crept in. She knew the stories about Meridians, cunning, manipulative, with technology that could mimic distress signals to lure unwary travelers. This could be a trap. Then it's a trap I'm walking into with eyes open, she murmured to herself as the ship detached from the station. The journey to Xylos was tense. Nix studied what little information existed about the planet, once a thriving research outpost before some catastrophic event rendered it uninhabitable centuries ago. Now it was nothing but a ghostly monument to scientific hubris, surrounded by debris fields that made navigation treacherous. As she approached the planet's atmosphere, she reestablished contact. TSV Horizon Wing, this is Nix Alian of Epsilon Drift. I'm approaching your coordinates. Please confirm your status. Still alive, came the strained reply. Barely, my oxygen is at 20% now. Power core containment is. Struggling, you actually came. I actually came, she confirmed, maneuvering through the debris field with practiced precision. Against better judgment and about 6 regulations, so try not to die before I get there. It would make the paperwork extremely awkward. A sound that might have been a laugh or perhaps a cough. I'll do my best, though I'm surprised an Australian would risk anything for a Meridian. Nix's markings flashed a deep indigo embarrassment. I'm a monitor station operator first. Political differences come second to life preservation. Noble sentiment, Talon replied, his tone unreadable. The planet's surface came into view, a desolate landscape of jagged rock formations and dust plains stretching endlessly beneath swirling amber clouds. The Horizon Wing wasn't difficult to spot. Its sleek design, distinctive of Meridian craftsmanship, lay awkwardly tilted against a ridge, emergency lights blinking weakly against the planetary gloom. Nix landed nearby, donning her exosuit before stepping onto the hostile surface. The atmosphere was thin but corrosive, filling the air with a perpetual haze that limited visibility to a few hundred meters. She approached the downed vessel cautiously, environmental scanner confirming toxic levels in the surrounding air. The ship's airlock was partially functional. After a series of override commands from her portable terminal, it reluctantly opened to reveal a dimly lit interior. The air inside was thin but breathable, for now. Hello, she called out, moving carefully through the tilted corridor. Talon Vex. A figure emerged from the shadows of the cockpit, and Nix found herself face-to-face with a Meridian for the first time in her life. He was tall, lean, with skin the color of jade leaves in spring. Geometric patterns were etched across his forehead and temples, not bioluminescent like hers, but permanent markings denoting his lineage and rank. His eyes, amber gold with vertical pupils, regarded her with equal parts suspicion and relief. You're really Australian, he said, as if confirming a doubt. His voice was hoarser in person, strained from hours breathing the thinning air. And you're really in trouble, she replied, gesturing to the ship's systems. We need to move quickly. The Star Whisper can't carry your vessel, but I can take you to safety. Talon nodded, then winced, steadying himself against the wall. There's equipment I need to salvage first. Data cores there. Important. Important enough to die for? Nix asked sharply. Your power core is minutes from catastrophic failure. Important enough, he insisted, moving back toward the ship's laboratory section. Help me or don't, but I'm not leaving without them. Nix cursed under her breath but followed him. The lab was in even worse condition than the cockpit, with equipment strewn across the floor and one wall partially caved in. Talon moved with purpose despite his obvious exhaustion, gathering small crystalline data cores and storing them in a protective case. What research is worth this risk? She asked, helping him stabilize a toppling storage unit. The kind that could change everything, he answered cryptically, securing the case with practiced movements. For both our peoples. Before she could press further, the ship groaned ominously around them. Power flickered and warning systems blared to life. Time to go, Nix urged, gripping his arm. Now. They barely made it to the airlock when the first explosion rocked the ship from within. Talon stumbled, the case clutched tightly to his chest as they sprinted across the dusty terrain toward the waiting Star Whisper. Behind them, the Horizon Wing began to break apart. its power core finally surrendering to instability. As Nix sealed her shuttle's airlock and initiated emergency launch procedures, she caught Talon looking back at his disintegrating vessel with an expression she couldn't quite decode. Not mere regret for lost property, but something deeper. Something that suggested she'd involved herself in something far more complicated than a simple rescue. "Welcome aboard," she said as they broke atmosphere, leaving the dying ship and forbidden planet behind. "I hope you realize you've just made me an accomplice to whatever you were doing down there." The Meridian's amber eyes met hers, weariness and wariness mingling in equal measure. "I assure you the feeling is mutual." As the Star Whisper accelerated away from Xylos, Nix couldn't shake the feeling that in saving this one life, she might have altered the course of countless others, including her own. The Star Whisper trembled as it pushed through the upper atmosphere of Xylos, warning lights flashing across the console. Nix's fingers danced over the controls, compensating for the atmospheric turbulence while simultaneously monitoring the power fluctuations from the dying ship they'd left behind. Beside her, Talon sat rigid in the co-pilot's seat, the protective case of data cores clutched tightly against his chest like a lifeline. "We need to clear the blast radius," she warned, banking the shuttle hard to port as debris from the horizon wing began to scatter across their trajectory. "Your ship's core is going critical." Talon nodded grimly. 45 seconds until complete containment failure. "You sound awfully precise for someone who just lost their ship," Nix remarked, eyeing him sideways. His jade skin seemed paler now, whether from exhaustion or something else she couldn't tell. "Engineer by training," he replied simply. "Navigator by necessity." A violent shudder rocked the shuttle as the first shockwave hit them, the Horizon Wing's power core beginning its catastrophic breakdown. Nix gripped the controls tighter, her bioluminescent markings flashing in rapid pulses of blue and purple as adrenaline surged through her system. "Hold on." The second wave hit harder, sending the Star Whisper tumbling end over end before Nix could stabilize their flight path. Behind them, the restricted planet's dusty surface lit up momentarily as the Meridian vessel detonated in a brilliant flash of blue-white energy. Talon hesitated, watching the explosion through the rear view screen. "That's not right." Nix frowned as she guided them back on course. "What's not right?" "The detonation pattern. Standard Meridian power cores don't produce that energy signature when they fail." His amber eyes narrowed. "Someone modified my ship." The implication hung heavy in the cramped cockpit as they broke free of Xylos's atmosphere and into open space. "You're saying your crash wasn't an accident?" "I'm saying," Talon replied carefully, "that my navigation system didn't simply fail. It was tampered with, and now that I'm seeing the core detonation." He trailed off, his expression hardening. "Someone wanted you dead," Nix concluded bluntly. "It appears that way." Silence settled between them as the Star Whisper accelerated away from the restricted zone. Nix's mind raced through the implications. If she'd just rescued a Meridian from an assassination attempt, she was involved in something far more dangerous than a simple violation of restricted space. "I should take you to the nearest neutral station," she said finally. "Gamma Outpost is about 12 hours from here. They have Meridian diplomats stationed there who can arrange your return transport." Talon's jaw tightened. "No official stations." "Excuse me." "If my ship was sabotaged, there's no telling who was behind it or how far their reach extends." He met her gaze directly. "I can't risk involving official channels until I know who wanted me eliminated." Nix's markings flashed an irritated red. "That's not how this works. I rescued you, which already puts me in violation of multiple regulations. I'm not adding harboring a possible fugitive to the list." "I'm not asking you to harbor me indefinitely," Talon said, his voice softening slightly. "Just don't take me anywhere official until I can examine these data cores. They contain the research I was transporting, and I suspect they're the reason someone tried to kill me." "And where exactly should I take you in the meantime?" Nix demanded. "In case you hadn't noticed, we're in a maintenance shuttle with limited supplies and even more limited space." Talon hesitated, then reached slowly for the navigation console. "May I?" After a moment's consideration, Nix nodded reluctantly. The Meridian input a series of coordinates, bringing up a star chart of a nearby sector. "Here," he said, pointing to an unmarked location at the edge of the Viridian sector. There's an abandoned research platform, Outpost Helios. It was used jointly by Australian and Meridian scientists during the early peace negotiations, then decommissioned when funding was cut. Nix frowned. How do you know about this place? My mother was stationed there, he answered simply, before relations deteriorated again. The revelation surprised her, a personal connection to the brief period of cooperation between their peoples before political tensions had sent them retreating back to their respective territories. It humanized him in a way that made Nix uncomfortable. Fine, she conceded finally. We'll go to this outpost. You can examine your precious data cores, and I'll figure out how to explain my unauthorized absence to command. As she adjusted their course, the shuttle's communication system suddenly blared to life with an incoming transmission. Nix's heart sank as she recognized the official Confederate frequency. Epsilon Drift Monitor Station to Shuttle Star Whisper, came a stern voice. Operator Elian, you are in violation of station protocols. Return immediately to your post. Talon tensed beside her. They've noticed your absence already. Automated system, Nix muttered, reaching for the communications panel. I thought I'd have more time. Repeat, return to your station immediately or face disciplinary action. She took a deep breath and opened the channel. This is Operator Elian. I'm responding to a distress signal in Sector 9. We'll return to post once rescue operation is complete. The lie came easily, though she knew it wouldn't hold for long, especially not when Confederate command inevitably detected the explosion on Xylos. No distress signals have been logged in Sector 9, the voice replied immediately. Your deviation is unauthorized. Sensor malfunction at the station, Nix countered, forcing confidence into her voice. I received the signal directly through emergency frequencies. We'll file a complete report upon return. There was a pause and then, transmit your current coordinates for verification. Nix cut the transmission instead, her markings pulsing an anxious violet. Now we have about 4 hours before they send someone to investigate. Then we'd better make the most of them, Talon said, his expression grim. Set a course for the outpost. I know a way to mask our engine's signature once we're closer. The journey to Outpost Helios was tense, filled with uneasy silence punctuated by necessary navigational exchanges. Nix found herself studying the meridian when he wasn't looking, the proud set of his shoulders, the way his geometric facial markings curved along his temples and disappeared beneath the collar of his flight suit. She'd grown up with stories about meridian cruelty, their cold calculation and technological treachery during the century-long conflicts. Yet this one had thanked her for saving his life with what seemed like genuine gratitude. You keep starring, Talon observed without turning from the viewport. Am I the first Meridian you've encountered? In person, yes, Nix admitted. We didn't exactly have cultural exchange programs on my homeworld. What did they teach you about us? He asked, curiosity evident in his tone. Nix hesitated. That you were dangerous, ambitious, that your technological advances came at the cost of ethics and compassion. A sad smile touched his lips. While we learned that Australians were arrogant mystics who valued tradition over progress, using your natural advantages to maintain planetary supremacy. Natural advantages? Your bioluminescence, he explained, gesturing to the patterns still pulsing along her cheekbones. The way your people can communicate non-verbally, sense emotional states, abilities we had to develop technology to replicate. It's not as advantageous as you think, Nix muttered. These markings broadcast my emotions whether I want them to or not. It makes deception difficult. Perhaps that's why Australians are considered more trustworthy in diplomatic circles, Talon observed. Your physiology makes you honest. I wouldn't say that, she countered, thinking of the politics that had led to her exile. We've mastered our own forms of deception. The conversation lapsed into silence again as Outpost Helios appeared on their sensors, a skeletal structure floating in the void, its solar arrays still partially functional despite years of abandonment. Nix approached cautiously, scanning for signs of recent activity or occupation. It appears deserted, she confirmed. Life support systems are minimal but operational. The station was designed to run on low power for decades, Talon explained. Part of the joint research initiative included developing sustainable deep space habitats. As they docked with the outpost's main airlock, Nix powered down the Star Whisper's primary systems, leaving only essential life support active. How long do you need to analyze those data cores? A few hours, if I can get the outpost's laboratory equipment operational, Talon replied, securing the protective case as he prepared to disembark. And then what? Nix asked pointedly. I'm risking my career, what's left of it anyway, by helping you. I deserve to know what I'm involved in. The Meridian hesitated at the airlock door, his amber eyes regarding her with a mixture of caution and what might have been respect. What I was transporting, he said finally, is research on cross-species genetic therapy, a potential cure for stellar decay syndrome. Nix's bioluminescent patterns flashed bright blue with shock. Stellar decay syndrome, SDS, was a devastating illness that had emerged in spacefaring species over the last century. It affected both Australians and Meridians, though in different ways. For her people, it caused their bioluminescent systems to malfunction until their bodies literally burned out from within. For Meridians, it progressively hardened their cellular structures until their organs petrified. That's impossible, she whispered. Both our governments have been researching cures for decades without success. Because they've been researching separately, Talon said softly. This project combined Australian biological knowledge with Meridian technological expertise. It was meant to be a joint triumph, a symbol of what we could achieve together. Then why the secrecy? Why were you in restricted space with this research? Talon's expression darkened. Because there are powerful figures on both sides who profit from our continued division. Peace and cooperation threaten their interests. The airlock hissed open, revealing the dimly lit interior of Outpost Helios, a monument to a brief moment of hope between their peoples, now gathering dust in forgotten space. I don't know who sabotaged my ship, Talon continued as they stepped inside, but I intend to find out, and then I'm going to complete this mission with or without official sanction. Nix studied him in the weak emergency lighting of the abandoned station, searching for deception in his features and finding none. If he was telling the truth, this research could save countless lives across both their civilizations. If he was lying. 2 hours, she decided. You have 2 hours to show me proof of what you're claiming. After that, we're leaving, and where we go next depends entirely on what you show me. Talon nodded solemnly. Fair enough. I'll need help restoring power to the laboratory section. As they moved deeper into the silent station, Nix found herself wondering how she'd gone from monotonous exile to potential revolutionary in less than a day. One rescue, one decision, and now she was harboring a Meridian scientist with research that could transform relations between their species, or get them both killed. For what it's worth, Talon said quietly as they worked to reroute power to the abandoned lab, I'm grateful you answered my distress call. Few would have risked what you did, especially for someone they've been taught to consider an enemy. Nix's markings pulsed a gentle lavender, a color she hoped he couldn't interpret. Don't thank me yet, she replied. We're still fugitives in an abandoned outpost with unknown pursuers potentially on our trail. An optimist I see, Talon remarked, the hint of a smile softening his features. Despite herself, Nix felt the corners of her mouth tugging upward. In my experience, optimism is just disappointment waiting to happen. Then I'll have to prove you wrong, the Meridian replied with unexpected warmth, on several counts. As the laboratory systems hummed back to life around them, Nix wondered if she'd already crossed a line from which there was no return, not just in helping Talon, but in beginning to see him as something other than the enemy she'd been raised to fear. Thalia woke to the unfamiliar but not unwelcome weight of Orion's arm draped across her waist. She watched him sleeping, his face relaxed in a way it rarely was during waking hours. The past 2 weeks had been a revelation, working together on integrating her salvaged Neblinan tech with the outpost systems, sharing meals with the small community that had accepted her without question, and nights spent learning the contours of each other's bodies and minds. Her tendrils stirred lazily, absorbing the peaceful contentment radiating from him. On Neblina, such intimate empathic connection was reserved for family and lifelong partners. The cultural taboo against sharing such bonds with non-Neblinans stemmed from ancient fears, stories of empaths driven mad by alien emotional patterns, of bonds that became parasitic rather than symbiotic. Yet Thalia had found none of that with Orion. Their connection was clear, balanced, enriching. His emotional landscape complemented hers, his steady pragmatism anchoring her more intuitive responses, his occasional melancholy softened by her natural empathic warmth. The outpost's communication panel chimed from the adjacent room, startling her from her reflections. Carefully extracting herself from Orion's embrace, she moved to check the incoming transmission, expecting the daily automated update from Coalition headquarters. Instead, the screen displayed an encrypted channel request with a signature that made her blood freeze, a Nebulanan diplomatic frequency. They had found her. For several heartbeats, Thalia stared at the blinking request, her tendrils rigid with fear. She could ignore it, pretend she'd never seen it. But the Nebulanan tech she'd helped integrate into the outpost's systems had undoubtedly strengthened their signal enough to be detected. Behind her, Orion stirred. "Thalia, what is it?" She turned to him, unable to hide her distress. His eyes immediately focused on the screen, understanding dawning. "How did they find you?" "The quantum relay," she whispered. "It has a unique signature. When we boosted the outpost's communications 4 days ago, we must have inadvertently broadcast it." Orion was fully alert now, crossing to her side. "You don't have to respond." "If I don't, they'll assume I'm being held against my will. Diplomatic protocols would justify an extraction team." She shook her head. "I can't put the outpost at risk." With trembling fingers, she accepted the transmission. The screen flickered, then resolved into the stern, familiar face of her former mentor, Counselor Nyria. Her midnight blue skin was a shade darker than Thalia remembered, her facial markings more pronounced with age. "Cultural Liaison Thalia," Nyria greeted her formally, using her abandoned title. "Your disappearance has caused considerable concern." "I resigned my position," Thalia replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Without proper protocols, your family is distressed. Ambassador Joreth has expressed particular concern for your well-being." Orion moved to stand beside her, a silent show of support. Nyria's eyes flicked to him, her expression hardening. "I see you found companionship in your exile." The disapproval in her tone was unmistakable. Thalia felt a surge of defiance. "I've found refuge and clarity." "Clarity?" Nyria's tendrils flared slightly, a sign of agitation. "You abandoned your duty, your family's legacy, to hide among aliens." "I refuse to be a political pawn," Thalia countered. "Joreth's alliance would strip our people of autonomy while giving the appearance of consent." "That is not your determination to make. The Council is divided, and you know it. Joreth is exploiting that division." Nyria was silent for a moment, her tendrils betraying her inner conflict despite her composed expression. "We will discuss this in person. A diplomatic vessel has been dispatched to your location. Estimated arrival, 36 hours." The transmission ended before Thalia could respond. She stood frozen, staring at the blank screen, her mind racing with implications. 36 hours, Orion repeated quietly. "Not much time." "No," Thalia turned to him, her violet eyes wide with fear and determination. "I won't go back, Orion, I can't." He nodded, already calculating. "The supply shuttle isn't due for another 10 days, but there's an automated mineral transport leaving tomorrow for the processing station in the Cygnus system. It's not designed for passengers, but it could get me off-world before they arrive." She grasped his hands. "Come with me." The request hung between them, unexpected even to Thalia herself. Orion's surprise was evident, both in his expression and the emotional surge she detected through their contact. "You have a life here," she continued. "I understand if you can't leave, but I had to ask." Before he could answer, the door chimed. Tessa's voice called through the intercom, unusually urgent. "Orion, we've got a situation in the comms center. Incoming transmission from Coalition Command, Priority Alpha." They exchanged alarmed glances. Priority Alpha transmissions were rare, typically reserved for emergencies or critical security updates. In the communications center, the entire outpost staff had gathered, faces tense. On the main screen, a gray-haired human woman in a Coalition uniform addressed them with military precision. "Outpost Delphi 7, this is Admiral Vega. Our intelligence indicates you are harboring a Nebulanan fugitive designated high-value diplomatic asset. Neblanan authorities have requested Coalition assistance in her safe return. The Admiral's expression was professionally neutral. We have been authorized to dispatch a security team to assist in this matter. Thalia felt the blood drain from her face. Coalition involvement meant this was no longer a simple diplomatic retrieval. It was now an interstellar incident. The Admiral continued. Engineer Orion Kavanaugh, given your history with the Coalition and your familiarity with the asset in question, you will serve as liaison between our security team and the Neblanan representatives. Orion stepped forward, his posture automatically shifting to military bearing. Admiral, I must respectfully point out that Thalia sought asylum at our outpost after fleeing forced political arrangements on her homeworld. She is not a fugitive but a refugee. A flicker of something, recognition, concern, crossed the Admiral's face. Your objection is noted, Kavanaugh. However, diplomatic protocols supersede personal assessments. The Coalition cannot interfere in Neblanan internal affairs, even when those affairs violate an individual's autonomy. Orion's voice remained controlled, but Thalia could feel his anger building. Our security team will arrive within 48 hours. Until then, the asset is to remain at your facility. Vega out. The screen went dark, leaving a stunned silence. Well, Jin finally said, breaking the tension, that was thoroughly unpleasant. Tessa turned to Thalia, her expression concerned. What exactly happens if they take you back to Neblina? Thalia's tendrils drooped. Best case, house arrest until I agree to the marriage alliance. Worst case, empathic reconditioning to ensure my compliance. Reconditioning? Orion asked sharply. A process that dampens certain emotional responses and heightens others. It's not pleasant and rarely fully reversible. The outpost staff exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Well, said the communications specialist, a lanky man named Deckard, it seems we have a bit of a scheduling problem. The comm system is going to need emergency maintenance. Might take, 48 hours at least. And the landing pad needs recalibration, added Huang, the head of maintenance. Safety protocols and all that can't possibly receive visitors until it's sorted. Thalia looked around in amazement as each staff member casually contributed to what was rapidly becoming a conspiracy to help her escape. The mineral transport still leaves tomorrow, Jin reminded them. But it'll need manual oversight now that the automated systems are, she winked, mysteriously malfunctioning. Orion squeezed Thalia's hand. Looks like you've made some friends. Friends who could lose their positions for this, Thalia protested. I can't ask you all to risk. You didn't ask, Tessa interrupted with a smile. We're offering. Later, in the privacy of Orion's quarters, they began hasty preparations. The mineral transport would provide only basic life support. No comfort, no amenities, just enough oxygen and heat to keep an emergency crew alive if necessary. It'll be rough, Orion warned as they packed essential supplies. And there's no guarantee the Cygnus station will grant you asylum. I know, Thalia carefully tucked the salvaged quantum relay into her pack, but I have to try. Orion paused, setting down the medkit he'd been inspecting. About your question earlier, about me coming with you. Thalia's tendrils stilled, anticipating rejection. Orion, I understand if. I'm coming. His decision radiated through his emotional field with such certainty that her tendrils curled with pleasure. I've spent 3 years hiding on this outpost, telling myself I was making a difference with mineral surveys and equipment repairs. But the truth is, I've been waiting. For what? Something worth fighting for again? He took her hands in his. Someone worth taking a stand beside. Thalia's eyes filled with tears, her tendrils gently wrapping around his wrists in Neblanan affection. It won't be easy. We'll be fugitives from both our peoples. Not the first time I've been on the wrong side of authority. His smile was wry. Though usually I have better rations. Their moment of connection was interrupted by an urgent knock. Deckard burst in without waiting for an answer, his normally calm demeanor shattered. We have a problem, he announced breathlessly. Big problem, the Neblanan ship, it's already here. Thalia's tendrils went rigid with shock. That's impossible, Nyria said 36 hours. Apparently she lied. Deckard ran a hand through his hair. They're demanding immediate docking privileges and, he hesitated, it's not just a diplomatic vessel, it's a warship. Orion swore under his breath. They must have already been in the system, waiting for confirmation of your location. It's worse, Deckard continued. The ship's commander is transmitting his credentials. It's Ambassador Joreth himself. Thalia sank onto the bed, her legs suddenly weak. He came personally. Apparently your jilted almost fiancé takes rejection seriously, Deckard said. Orion was already moving, grabbing the emergency packs. The mineral transport, can we launch it early? Huang's prepping it now, but the Nebulanan ship is positioning to block the departure vector. They can't fire on it without causing an interstellar incident, Thalia said, forcing herself to think strategically. A commercial transport is neutral territory. Unless they claim it's been hijacked by a fugitive, Orion countered. Then it becomes a security operation. They were interrupted by the outpost's general alarm, 3 short blasts signaling an unauthorized entry. Deckard's communicator crackled to life with Jin's panicked voice. They've overridden the airlock protocols. Neblanan's security team is inside the main dome. Go, Deckard urged them, pointing to the maintenance tunnel access in the corner of the room. That leads directly to the secondary launch bay. We'll try to slow them down. Thalia grabbed his arm. Be careful. Neblanan security forces are trained to detect emotional deception. Then I won't lie, Deckard grinned. I'll just be really confused about everything. As Orion pried open the access panel, Thalia caught a flicker of movement in the corridor, a shadow passing the frosted glass of the door. Her tendrils sensed the approaching emotional signature before she saw its owner. Cold determination, absolute certainty, and beneath it all, a possessive obsession that made her recoil. He's here, she whispered. Joreth is already inside. Orion pulled her toward the tunnel entrance. Then we go, now. As they slipped into the narrow maintenance passage, Thalia heard the door to Orion's quarters slam open. The last thing she saw before Orion pulled the access panel closed behind them was Ambassador Joreth's face. Handsome by Neblanan standards, with azure skin and elaborately decorated tendrils that now writhed with fury. His eyes met hers for just an instant, but in that moment she felt the full force of his rage. And something worse, a cold promise that this pursuit was far from over.